So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Inside Nonprofit Technology Transitions. My name is Hamlett, and I am so pleased to be joined today by Nancy Sestak, who is the Director of Advancement Operations with the Westminster Schools. Nancy, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Watt.
So today's webinar is a conversation. We don't have any slides. It's really just a chance to discuss with Nancy the process that she helped lead Westminster through about a year ago to evaluate alternatives to their longstanding uh, donor management systems, the center of which was Razor's Edge. So we're going to talk about what precipitated this evaluation, how Nancy went about it, both internally at the school with her stakeholders, as well as with other vendors and with peer schools. We're going to talk about some of the decisions that were made along the way, and then give Nancy a chance to reflect on kind of the implications of that here a year later. And then we'll have time at the end for any questions that you have. If you do have questions as we go, feel free to drop them into the Q&A panel, and I'll keep an eye on that in the meeting. But let's go ahead and start with some introductions. So I'll begin. I'm Watt, and I'm the founder and principal of Watt Hamlett Consulting, where it's my mission to help organizations navigate and succeed with their technology planning, primarily in the Salesforce ecosystem, but in other tech ecosystems as well. And so that means I work with nonprofits through needs assessments and technology planning initiatives. That's actually how Nancy and I work together with her work at Westminster. I also help with partner and product selections and with implementation management, and have been doing that off and on in various ways for about the past 20 years. And Nancy is someone that I was pleased to have become part of my network. I think Nancy, maybe about 8 years ago, we were introduced through some mutual colleagues, and got to know each other in the respective work that we were doing. But just again, so thrilled to have you here today, Nancy, to share your story. So, Nancy, for those who don't know you, tell us about yourself, kind of your background in the nonprofit sector and the work that you're doing today at Westminster.
Sure, I'm happy to. Yes, I'm currently here at Westminster Schools, and I'll just share a bit of my journey. I have quite a depth of experience, particularly in nonprofit technology. My always favorite job will be my Zoo Atlanta job many years back, and that is actually where I opened Razor's Edge for the very first time. It's a very long time ago, but it was at the zoo where I dealt with fundraising. You also in that space deal with memberships. That's more than an annual fund. You sort of have memberships, go deep in that. And then the joy of a place like the zoo is getting to know things like ticketing systems, ride systems, food, retail, event space, animal related systems. So HR and payroll, kind of got the broader experience of all kinds of systems that needed upgraded and admin. And so just really enjoyed working on the grounds along with all the animals as my customers.
Yeah.
So,
Nancy, did you have a favorite animal at the zoo?
oh, the small clawed otters will always be my favorite because they like to play and swim. And we had pandas at the time too, baby pandas.
Okay.
One of my favorite heat moments was someone coming in saying, "We've got baby pandas that'll be on view in 6 weeks. We need time ticketing brought up." So I made it happen and got those little pandas seen by the rest of the world.
Nice.
So a unique part of my journey, and a fun one and a great memories. But from there, I kind of changed and got more in depth in particularly in fundraising. So I moved over to Emory University, also here in Atlanta. And that's where I was exposed to, of course, it's a university, but it also has healthcare side to it. So it was at that time a fundraising shop of about 200, and I trained everyone on the advancement system there, which at the time was Ellucian's Advance. And at the time they were moving from a Windows-based system to web, so training everybody on that transition. And that's where I just got to know so many people, with users beyond the advancement department, and seeing really things like in-depth things like prospect management, and large volume transactions, large gifts, grateful patients, all the things. And I loved my time at Emory. And then from there, I had the opportunity to move into a consulting role. So kind of left the official nonprofit space, but worked for a consulting company that was focused on fundraising and nonprofits, primarily in North Georgia, but I had some clients around the world. And my role at Cox Curry was to be the systems consultant. So I got to work with all kinds of nonprofits, whether it was from choosing a system, converting a system, as much as a conversion from spreadsheets to something like Little Green Light, or moving something from Razor's Edge to Salesforce. Also got to do some assessments, so looking at departments and how should advancement departments be set up, how should advancement operations be set up, and really loved that work and got to know so many people, especially in the Atlanta area, and see all the things. And then in 2023, I made the leap over here to Westminster Schools, got back in a mission-focused singular nonprofit, and have been in this independent school space since 2023, and really enjoy my work over here. And as I'll share with you in a few moments, I think we're a pretty unique advancement shop in Atlanta, but even in the independent school space. So I come here with a lot of conversion experience, a lot of upgrade experience, a lot of vendor experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the unique things that you bring to your role is you've obviously had that experience working directly inside of nonprofits with fundraising systems and fundraising processes, but then also having been a consultant working with organizations and kind of seeing things from that perspective as well, which I feel like definitely factored into the process that you went about at Westminster. So tell us a little bit about Westminster Schools, the mission of the school, and what kind of institution it is.
Yes, we're a K-12 independent day school here in Atlanta, so no boarding. We are rather large in the independent school space. We are 1,800 students, and they are itty bitty. They are in kindergarten all the way up to our 18-year-old seniors. So we have about 1,800 students on campus every day, 180 acres of facility. And then the 1,800 students translates into about 1,400 parent households that we work with. We have a $5 million annual fund, which puts us on the higher end again of independent school fundraising. And it's about 50-50 between parents and alumni that give to that. But if you factor in the alumni that are also parents, in my opinion, it's more parents than alumni when you do that.
Mm.
And yes, since we have about 12,000 alumni, and the moment we're in right now is June 30th closes an 8-year capital campaign, or comprehensive campaign actually. So we in advancement operations are really eager to line this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, right. Yes. And for that reason, thank you for making time for this, because I know it's not only your normal year end period, but it also is this culmination of this really large capital campaign. And I know that kind of factored into the process
It did.
that you
Yeah.
conducted as well. So we'll get into some more of that. Great. So in terms of then sort of where you fit inside of the school, talk a little bit about that, kind of where your where advancement operations sits, and kind of how you fit in with the way that the staff is structured at the school.
Yes. So Emily Henry is our Chief Advancement Officer over Office of Institutional Advancement, and she's got 37 people under her. So under her, then that does include communications and events for the whole school. So that's one side of our group. And then the other groups we have ranging from 3 to 5 people in each department, but we're very, it's all the things fundraising. So we've got leadership giving officers. We've got a donor relations team that does exceptional stewardship. We have alumni and parent relations, because in independent schools, parent relations and alumni relations are both very important. We have our Westminster Fund team that's out there doing all the work. And then my advancement operations team, there's 5 of us. So I'm the director overseeing it. We've got a coordinator who handles most of the gift processing. We see about 6,000 transactions a year. And then I've got a manager focused on the financial aspects. So working with our business office, making sure we're reconciled, making sure the money's flowing to the right funds, keeping the GL in line. I've got a systems manager who oversees, because we of course oversee all the systems. So Razor's Edge, Give Campus, Alma Connect. I'm sure we all have the variety of systems under us. And then the other position is a prospect manager is actually under me. And I've got him heavily into doing some analytics, which has been invaluable as we're looking at 8 years of data. So we've got all of that. As I say, we're behind and in front of all the users in our department and outside on the campus.
And you said five people on your team. How many total folks are in the advancement office?
We're 37 under Emily.
37. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on the larger side for
Mhm.
nonprofit fundraising operations, in my experience.
Yes, I think we are in the larger, and we sort of straddle, and I'll hit on this a couple of times. We straddle being an independent school and having that makeup and being really like a college. We are larger than some colleges that are out there as far as advancement.
Right. Right. So there's some particularities of fundraising in that environment versus say at the zoo. Um,
Mhm.
well, one thing I was wondering if you could touch on is the flip. I know when
Oh,
we started talking, that was kind of a very important concept in the work that you do, and I think kind of gets at the crux of some of what it means to fundraise in this kind of school environment versus other types of organizations.
yes, and the flip highlights it's where disparate systems are the hardest. But we with the flip entails what happens when your seniors graduate and move on to being alumni. Some parents become former parents. You have a whole new influx of students, and some of them have siblings, and some of them are brand new, and some of them have grandparents and cousins. And I think in every single database, relationships are always kind of the trickiest thing. So the flip involves lots of relationships. And so you've got to get it done because your annual fund can't move until it got its population set and done, which is something that's also very unique about an independent school is I know every one of my donors. So I don't get a donation from someone who's not in my database. So at the zoo, anyone could give to us. Even at Emory, with the healthcare side especially, we took donations, whereas as an independent school, you actually look skeptically upon someone who's giving to us, or maybe they're trying to give to the Westminster School in Connecticut.
Mm.
So what makes us sort of unique is I know all of my donors. There's no surprise donors really in the independent school world. Um, so there's that. But the hard part about this flip is because student information resides in what's called a Veracross is our system, our student information system. So that's, if you can imagine, where all the parents and the students, their emergency contact information, their grades, their scheduling, all of that operational school stuff is there. But when they become alumni, we are the system of record for all alumni. So the school stops keeping track of their address and telephone number as soon as they graduate, whereas we really want to keep up with them. We will not let them go. And so we have to bring that data over with the systems. We have to keep current parents and current students in sync. But then once we get the alumni, they're ours to take over. And maintaining those two systems is often the rub at the independent school when it comes to maintaining a separate fundraising system or merging in with a larger student information
Right.
system.
Right, because in non-educational nonprofits, your donor database is typically your system of record for all of the people in your world. Whereas here you have two, and they have their, each has their own legitimate
Mm-hmm.
function, but there comes this point in time every year where you've got to transition folks from one to another. And I know that was part of what was on your mind as you were thinking about what your other options for systems might be. So maybe we
Yeah.
can just transition and kind of get into that. So you arrive at the school in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when did the idea of you know considering other options for your fundraising technology come about? Was that something that was kind of already already on people's minds and in the works when you arrived, or was that something that you initiated?
It was certainly on the minds. We are a razor's edge in fundraising, and I said we are Veracross in the student information world. And I there's a general, just sort of rumbling frustration about the razor's edge. And you're managing two systems from a user perspective. So there's an element of, oh, there's got to be something better than this. And there's also that outside force of what's this Salesforce thing? And I heard that a lot in consulting. Salesforce is free. Everyone should be on Salesforce. So what is that? And the other force would have been Veracross is rolling out and enhancing its fundraising system. So there is value, and other schools are on the Veracross fundraising system. So what does that look like? So there was sort of all of these movements, but then of course the primary is usually money, and we had it was in 2024 we had signed our 3-year renewal with Blackbaud for the Razor's Edge, the database view, the NXT view, and so when I came on, I knew, and I had gone through conversions, and I knew how long it takes. So to me, there's really a 3-year window you need to have to truly get yourself live and onto something else. And so this was our moment after we renewed to go out and see what else is there. What are the options? And that's daunting because there's a lot out there.
Mhm. Right. And you're in this environment where you've got Razor's Edge, which is a Blackbaud product, and Blackbaud has
Mm-hmm.
its own student information system
Mm-hmm.
offer. And then the school also has Veracross, which is your student information system, and they have their own donor system offer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just from your awareness in the market, Salesforce is also a, a solution that's used by these schools. Um, and so, right. And so seeing that point of that 3-year renewal as being kind of when the clock starts for them thinking about what's next. And I would just say, and this is, I mean, one of the things I hope people will take away from this session is how much time you gave yourself and you gave the school to get through this process. I mean, I think what I often see is that when organizations get a year out from their renewal, that's when they'll
Mm-hmm.
start thinking about alternatives. And at that point, it's usually too late,
Mm-hmm.
um, because there's there's that work of figuring out what you're going to move to, and then figuring out how long that's going to take and who needs to be involved, and then getting the actual work started and completed. And so, yeah, I was just really admired how you were trying to help the school understand like 3 years is not too much time to be thinking about all of this.
It's really not, because especially, when we're talking about fundraising systems, we're talking about business critical systems. We can't take 6 weeks off of gift processing, in November and December to implement, to switch off, convert, test, and all of that. You've got all of these things. You're going to want to take PTO yourself. You're going to have emergencies come up. You're going to deal with your own turnover at whatever level. And then you can't forget that the vendors that you choose, you are also beholden to their timeline as well. So you may think you can do it in a year, but if that vendor doesn't have the skill set and the time to help you, you can't do that. And then, of course, the last thing you want to do is have to go back to your own current vendor and say, oh, I just need one more year, because they are no longer on your side once they know you're leaving.
Right.
So it's best to have that end date set and buffered as best you can.
Yeah. So you had sort of the beginning and end of this renewal cycle in mind. What were some of the other factors or considerations as you were thinking about the timing of, if you were going to change systems, what was the window for getting that done?
Well, we've got our own, school cycle to think about. We've also got things like the campaign. So I knew that these last few, really from January to this June, we're really, really going to be packed. And what does that look like? How much change can I get out of the team in that time? How much dedicated testing could I get out of them in that time? So really kind of looking at the overall things going on. And then as Watt experienced in the middle of our analysis, we learned there was a head of school change that's happening right now. So
Yeah.
there were just a lot of things that were coming out of it. And one of the things, Watt, you asked my team, and I work with great, sharp people, and I work with people who are just technically astute and not afraid of technology. But Watt asked two things. One was, are you willing to change, basically? And I got it. Everyone was, oh yeah, we'd love to get off the system and onto something else and learn something new. But then when you ask, like, are you going to be able to invest the time in the change, you saw a different level of answer, which was, oh, I've got a big year ahead of us. I'm short staffed right now. I don't know when I'm going to be. So I think I forget how you phrased it, but it's like willingness versus appetite or something that's very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, right, because you know, I think what normally comes to mind, you think about technology transitions is you think about features and functions. But
Mhm.
really, just as important for you all, or maybe even more important, was your readiness. Like, yeah, even
Yet
if a new
readiness.
system would
Yeah.
be great, are we ready to take that on? Is this the season for us to do that? And yeah, and I really appreciated your willingness to come at it with that lens as well. Um, so talk a little bit then about you kind of lay out this timeline for the organization. Like if we're going to do this, this is how long it's going to take. And as I recall, you wanted to get leadership buy-in just on that concept alone, right? Even before you
Mm-hmm.
started in earnest on the actual evaluation work.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of reaction did you get, or sort of what did you hear from your leadership when you kind of laid this out for them?
I think for us, when I laid out the timeline, which was basically fiscal year 25 and 26, looking at it, I think that made it pretty clear to everyone. Everyone could suddenly see in front of them what those years look like. So my chief advancement officer suddenly saw a packed last year, a packed fiscal year 2006, and she's already in her mindset of this is going to be a tough year anyway. So laying it out graphically, I thought it was very helpful, and everyone could see the blocks, and you can also see how you can't shrink the blocks, that you can't always move, and you can't move them around, and they're sequential and they're dependent. So laying out those dependencies and sticking in key milestones like contract renewal, head of school change, campaign end, campaign events, putting all of those things in there is very important. You can start to move it as you develop, as you get more granular, you can move it, and maybe you shrink some of the times and maybe grow them, but just seeing how quickly time flies. um,
Mhm.
and then and the buffer, I think, is also important, that you cannot go live the month before your contract ends. You've got to have time where you're, if not parallel processing, you're at least have access to your old system. And that's making sure that's visible in the timeline as part of the project. Part of the project is beyond go live. It's the continuity that you've got to keep.
Right.
So the
Making sure there's
timeline.
that buffer there between when your current contract expires and when you can possibly get live with a new system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because again, once the vendor knows you've converted, they're not going to be helpful.
You're not their top priority
You're
anymore.
not their top priority anymore.
Yeah. Great. You got the go ahead from leadership to pursue the evaluation. Then
Mm-hmm.
how did you go about involving people internally in this process?
We had kind of layers, and I will say, I have exceptional leadership at this school, and they have great trust and faith in me, and so when I was put in charge of it, and then I was able to bring on Watt, there was great trust that two experts were on this. Everyone else is really busy and would like to just hear the outcome. But the key stakeholders were the chief advancement officer, the CFO, because this is about to be a significant investment if we convert, and then the CIO, of course, from a what are all my systems on campus doing. So those were the three that were the most interested in of course, the final outcome. Those were the ones I needed to be the most educated because I needed them to be able to talk to their peers. I needed them to feel confident in front of the board of trustees and key donors about what decision we were making. And not part of the plan, but another thing is we have a new head of school, and now all three of those positions are well schooled in why the advancement office is on the system it's in. So education at the chief level. And then I have a series of peers. So each of those departments that I'd mentioned, so alumni and parent relations, leadership giving, annual funds, all of those, each of the heads of those departments, we all work very closely together. So keeping them abreast of change might be coming, this is where we're headed. That was the sort of the lower level decision group for me as well. So kind of keeping those key pieces in line. And then of course my team itself, the most up in front of what change in system would mean, was an important part of it too.
Yeah. So getting input from the leadership level as well as from the various departments within the advancement office. But then also what I'm hearing is then the communication back. Like these are the people you want to keep informed as you're going through this process, so they're very clear on what's happening and when.
Yeah, because they're all going to be impacted. You know, even the IT team, they're going to be impacted by this change. And I am grateful. I'm grateful always for the trust they place in me, and they put great trust in both of us working together. I have worked in other projects where sometimes those people above you want to get in the weeds, and that can be a real problem as far as keeping a timeline and pace. So I do always, you know, it's a balance you have to strike with keeping them informed and keeping them smart and keeping them good, but sort of making sure there is that trust in you brought me on to do this, you know, I will deliver what you want. And you know, every single detail might not be covered, but I've got the big things covered is an important part of pace.
Interesting. Yeah. So keeping everybody focused at the thing that's appropriate for their level in the process. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's talk about tech. So you know, you're soliciting input from your users in terms of you know what pain points they're having, what would be some of their wish list items, concerns, that kind of thing. You know, how did you kind of narrow in on the technology side of this? You know, what you wanted to be looking at or considering as alternatives?
Well, we did find, you know, one of the things is, well, what's the universe out there to look at? And I do think in the independent school world, it is a little bit less than I found in my consulting role. So in the consulting world, there are a lot more players out there that just aren't in the independent school. And so narrowing that field was a little bit easier in the sense of we definitely had this what is Salesforce moment out there that we had to solve because the higher ed people were all moving to Salesforce. And then on the other side, you've got the K-12. There's a bit of the contraction as we kind of learned, sort of moving away from the singular fundraising database down to a more inclusive operational database. So we knew we had to look at those two factors. And then you and I just knew Razor's Edge, so we didn't have to do too much. We were trying to keep up with whatever might be ahead of us there. So the big thing was sort of figuring out what is this Salesforce landscape look like, which was more complicated than I thought, but made me very grateful I had Watt with me on that part of the journey.
Well, and it was changing even as we were going through this process.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that really struck me was, um, often when I'm working with nonprofits, um, they, it's not unusual for them to see themselves in a category of one. And
Hmm.
so, they're very focused on what's going to be the best thing for us. And I think what was interesting to me was that in your case, it was very much a question of who else like us has done this already.
Hmm.
That was a big criteria for you in terms of the solutions you even wanted to consider.
Absolutely. And that's a lot about how I've always approached our industry is the best thing going on is something someone else is doing, and I just need to learn what they're doing and hear from them what works and what doesn't. So we did spend a good amount of time on peer evaluations. What are our peers doing out there? I also knew that was going to be a big component with my leadership because that is where the trust comes from is okay, if you've looked at all of these other schools that we consider peers, then that adds a lot of weight to what I'm about to say as well. So it was really, you can't talk to everybody, so you do have to pick who you're doing, and that's where you learn yes, we're on this, but we hate it. We converted a year ago. We're still not there. This vendor wasn't very good. But you also hear good things too. But you also learn things like, yes, we're on this product because a board member is the head of the company and therefore we're on it. So you learn a lot more deep about, how people end up on the systems they end up.
Right.
But I will stand by peer evaluations. I will always be a peer resource because we are not competing. We're not even competing for the same alumni or parents in the school down the street. So I think I've
Right.
always found great camaraderie. And I shared back my results too. So for everyone who helped me with that, I shared back where we landed too.
That's right. And just practically for people, I mean, how did you find those other schools?
Gosh, it was all kinds of things. Sometimes the vendors themselves would know who you want to look to and talk to, and that's always great. They're always going to send you the best people. I love networking. It's my happy place. So I'm happy to reach out to people. I've always found people to be willing to talk. And then just also my head of advancements well networked. And there are certain places that she wanted me to talk to and opened those doors
Mhm.
as well. So it's good to have that mix and not just go with who the vendor tells you to talk to, because that is not always the most honest. But you can get great things out of all kinds of users. But looking for, schools that were as similar to us as possible. We're not the same as a very small, K through 6 school, and we're not the same as a boarding school either. So
Mhm.
finding a mix of true peers is the work we did.
Yeah. So, so talk a little bit then about that process. So you identified schools that you thought would have something to say that would illuminate your thinking. Then how did you approach them? What was kind of the nature of the interaction?
I think I would always try to, I'd reach out, introduce both of us, because I think you joined me on quite a few of those conversations, which was good to have and good for you to hear about the other schools. And I would generally send an agenda of questions that I'd like to go through. So, how you need to know things like who supports your system. Sometimes all the IT support had to be in the advancement department. Sometimes it was all in the IT department. So filtering out those nuances that matter as far as staffing. Um, and I did need to know things like their transaction volume, their annual fund, just to apples and apples in it, and things like how long have you been on the system and what else have you used in your professional career? Because it was always nice to hear from people who have used different systems in their career as well.
And was there a prevailing sentiment you walked away from those calls with? Like did those calls point you firmly in the direction of a certain solution set or firmly away from a direction or what was the what was the kind of, how did all that culminate for you?
I think one of the key takeaways that we Westminster took away was that we do best with a system that's focused on fundraising, and plugging into systems that are highly focused on fundraising. When dealing with vendors that started out doing something else and have now added fundraising, I think that's where your advancement shops got the most frustrated, because they weren't as flexible to do the true fundraising work that you need to get done day to day. So, and that is our experience too. So I'll use Give Campus as one of our ancillary systems. It's a great system. It does exactly what it needs to do. It's got reliable online transactions. We can data feed it in and out all day long. It works for us. We make it work for us. We're able to do that, and just dealing with systems that aren't super fundraising based felt like that was going to be a switch we didn't want to make, even though it might have the benefit of blending more in with the student system.
Right. So you had the supportive leadership to go through the process. You got input from your internal stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
You talked to peer schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about your interaction with software vendors?
I thought that was a really interesting experience. Um, you know, who doesn't want to talk to someone trying to buy something? The Salesforce bigger companies that were selling so much to the colleges and universities, they didn't even have the time to fit us in, and we weren't a right fit for them. So, um, that was a key learning of, like, there's some Salesforce stuff out there that is just not approachable for a $5 million annual fund. You have to have a $20 million annual fund, say, to move on to that system. But of course, vendors will always want to talk to you. But learning that Salesforce landscape was really interesting, because you've got NPSP going away and nonprofit cloud kind of coming in. Then you've got this education cloud going on. That was a puzzle, and that was really more of a school system kind of thing. And then you've got sort of the higher ed of FinaQuest and Ascend that have now changed names. But even my ability to articulate that now, I couldn't have done a year and a half ago. And some of those players have all changed. But I think our ability to outline that for the leadership made them feel like confident in a space they had not felt confident in before as well. So
Hmm.
taking the time to go deep with those vendors and ask them a lot of questions in the little time you are given is important. And then I will say, I think I had that one thing you have to come to terms with is that you're going to ask for demos, and that demo is never going to show you everything that you want it to do. And so when you go into vendor discussions, it's really important to have your highest and most critical needs first. So in 2026, I think we can all assume it's going to be able to handle a transaction, a cash transaction, a check, and a donor advised bond. But if there's a particular report or a particular way you address your population, make sure you are able to ask those critical questions of the vendor, versus expecting them to create an environment that's exactly like yours. They don't have the time to do that. So it's a balance. You can ask a lot of them, but you can't ask too much of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and at this stage, you were thinking more in terms of high level capabilities rather than
Mm-hmm.
anything too deep, because you just needed to sort of validate that the solution generally met your needs and was a fit from the other criteria that you had as well. All right, well, it's time for the big reveal. So you went to, actually, but before we get to that, what was the elapsed time and everything we've talked about to this point?
Let's see. So contract renewal was like August of 24. You and I started talking about an engagement in the fall of 24, and we started the landscape analysis and assessment. Really, it was December of 2024. and you spent time surveying users. We spent time calling peer schools, and we spent time talking to vendors and evaluating our key needs, and all of that. And that took us solidly, I think, into mid-March. Because some of it was discover you don't line up all your vendors in the beginning. You do the discovery calls between your peer calls and your vendor calls. You learn about other people you need to talk to. And then I did go to a conference in the middle of that. That was great because I got to really kind of like face to face with some of the vendors, which was a really helpful moment there that you just can't do over Zoom. But we finally delivered the where we were to leadership in very early April of 2025.
So really kind of August 24 through April 25. So nine months or so with
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 months of sort of the intense work of
Mm-hmm.
the assessments. Um, and what was the recommendation?
Well, we decided to lean in to Razor's Edge and to stay where we were. And so, I delivered concrete numbers against why of presenting the cost of what it would mean to convert, presented the time means to convert, and it really did come back to that concept of let's stick with what we know, because the cost to convert to a Salesforce was so high for us. And I'll continue to say this: your argument for true ROI because you move from one fundraising system to another is a very difficult argument. It would be a unique place to say I can cut a staff person because we moved to a new system. That's rarely the case. You're moving on to more flexible, more modern technology, ideally. And then the other thing is, it's hard to say you're truly going to raise X more money because of a system. You know, Fundraising is much more nuanced than how many solicitations you can send out or how many gifts you can process. I can only process more gifts if more gifts come in. So, there are certainly good arguments for prospecting analysis, stewardship, quick return on an accuracy of the money, and getting really good ratings and all of that. But to truly say, I'm gonna pay for the cost of this system over the next 5 years is a very difficult thing. So you're looking at an investment into an operation, and so we decided to stay with what we knew because we're pretty good, right? We get data in and out, we figure it out. We're agile, we're nimble, we're creative. We're exploiting. We wanted to exploit the tools. We learned in the survey we need to educate our users more, and that we had plenty of places to go. I will say it's hard because a year ago I said, Blackbaud's moving on to NXT. I think in a year from now, we will really be able to be using that. And I think the greatest disappointment I have is where Blackbaud has taken their system in a year. We haven't really been able to move over to that. Maybe next year will be different. But then we've plugged in, Give Campus continues to grow and continues to develop new products. So we're poised and ready to take advantage of some AI there. We're engaging with the virtual engagement officer this year. So it's sort of like we chose to invest in the best of niche systems and kind of hold down on Razor's Edge. It's what we know. It's got our data stored, and the cost to move was just really, really high.
Yeah, you felt like you could, right, versus the cost to change, just the monetary cost to change, that seemed out of line. But then there also was just the timing of it, right? That I think in the end you kind of came back to that and realizing that um, that it really didn't ultimately feel like the right time in the life of the school.
Correct. Yeah, the end of the campaign, the beginning of the campaign, the new head of school, it just felt like a little too much for us to do well.
Yeah, that risk of trying to close out a capital campaign that had been going on for 7 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the unknowns of what would be required from your team with a new head of school coming in. That's another kind of big
Huge thing.
transition and kind of unknown. So I'm gonna open it up here to Q&A in just a moment. So if folks on the call here, if you have questions for Nancy, please go ahead and drop those into the Q&A. Look forward to seeing what you all are thinking. But I do have one last question for you, Nancy, which is, so a year has passed
Mm-hmm.
since the evaluation. In looking back on the process that you went through, are there things, what are the decisions you're glad you made? Are there things you might do differently, for the future? Or just maybe what advice would you give to schools that are, or nonprofits for that matter, that are in a similar place?
Yeah, I'm proud of the decision we made, and I do believe it was the right decision for us. And I think we got it. But going through the process gave us so many more fruits than just that one decision, because we took from that analysis feeling very good about our decision, and I had leadership out there supporting the whole department in the decision, and that goes a long way, and it gives them confidence in front of their other people. I turned some of our work with our surveys and our peer and on all my peer discussions into goals and objectives for my team this year and next year, frankly. So just that ability to learn all about your stakeholders and really understanding them, getting objective feedback from your stakeholders is very hard. In advancement operations, people sometimes tend to think, oh, we know what we're doing, we have some sort of secret, and we really don't. And we're better off when our users know more, and push us on our limit and ask us to do more. So I think we broke down some barriers with our users. I also just feeling good about leaning into these niche systems help us make decisions to invest in those other decisions. So I think we are investing in technology that is a much easier argument for me now that we went through that analysis.
Mhm.
But the advice that I have, which kind of came upon my preparation for this, is it's 2026. The last year in technology has been unbelievable and head spinning. And where are we going with AI, and what do CRMs look like? And I'm about to go into my last year of that third year renewal. We have to constantly be looking at where are we going next, and and as stewards of our organization's resources, how are we best using them? But it's a constant survey of this landscape. So I have a great basis. It's by no means done. It's constantly talking with peers, constantly keeping up with UWAT and seeing what's out there. And just, it's why we love what we do, is because it's always changing and there's always something new to look at.
We've got one actually a multi-part question that's come in, Nancy. So I'll put this first one to you. So did you end up making changes to Razor's Edge? So once you were clear, like this is a system we're going to be sticking with for a while, did you end up changing anything about the system itself or how you were using it?
It's a good question. I we're constantly trying to deploy web-based use to our users, and we kind of leaned into that to try to say, okay, you can did some trainings around moving the tiles and understanding your names. So we didn't change any of our data structure, how we use it. We didn't add any Blackbaud modules in this moment. We the more and more Razor's Edge is just sort of becoming a storage of data for us, with our analytics and our transactions and all of that sort of being outside of it.
Yeah, and actually, could you just speak on that a little more? The fact that you are using an external system for analytics with Razor's Edge.
Yeah, well, we have with my analytics role here, he's kind of pulling the data out and moving it into Tableau.
Tableau.
And we're doing a little bit. It's not ever live, but we're moving towards some interactive dashboards, where we can start doing some. We've done a lot of historical analysis, and our next step is to start doing that modeling forward. we can do a little bit of prediction based on last year and all of that, but we have Nathan has gotten us into the Tableau world, and with the support of IT as well.
Right. So being able to go beyond the constraints of Razor's Edge,
Yeah,
even while you're still a Razor's Edge customer.
yes, you can
Yeah.
do so much more with your data once outside of Razor's Edge than you can do with what it is inside of it.
And then the next question is, was your staff disappointed to not get a change?
Um, yes, in the sense of I think everyone wanted that idea of just something like new to learn. I've got a young staff, and like I said, this is the same system I opened up many years ago. So disappointed, but I do think they also felt it because all of that work, like 80% of this work is going to fall onto AO, right? All the testing data extracts. Is this correct? Is that not correct? Are you going to be able to keep business going? Keeping all of that would fall to us. So it was both relief and a little disappointment that we couldn't, try something new.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me was that um, through the survey and sort of gauging people's sentiments related to a whole bunch of different aspects of working with Razor's Edge, one of the things that became clear was that the closer someone was to Razor's Edge, the less they liked it.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
was really just the
Yes.
people, in advancement operations, the folks who were really in there the most day to day. The further people got from it, whether they were major gift officers or on the events team communications, their
Correct.
their sentiment was a little bit more measured
It's
anyway.
okay.
So they weren't
Yeah.
they weren't necessarily the ones clamoring for change. And then the other thing that I thought, just to kind of echo something you said earlier, that I thought was kind of a nice byproduct of the process was um, how appreciative folks were in those different departments of you soliciting their input.
Mm-hmm.
Um, an open-ended question on the survey of just like, is there anything else you'd like to share? And the most common answer there was thank you for leading us through this. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to have a voice in this. And so even though there might have been that disappointment for folks who were like, oh, I thought the whole point was we were going to change systems.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
actually came away being a little bit more strengthened, I think, as an organization, having gone through that process together.
Well, I absolutely do. It was an opportunity for the advancement operations group to really kind of be seen and heard in a almost a regular way of giving those updates. And we, like I said, I'm very customer service focused, and I want to make sure we always treat people with respect and help them and guide them and teach them. And it was just a great launching board to have for so many conversations on training and helping people learn more.
Okay, here's another question. So of the folks who really wanted to switch off of Razor's Edge, the ones that were closer to it, what sort of frustrations were there, and how much do you think their frustrations would have actually been fixed with another system?
I think that is a great question, and I have said that before, that there are certain things like matching up records from one to another, or deciphering soft credits and handling donor advised funds that are always going to be sticky, or they get solved in one system but breaks in another. But we did have that discussion of there is no silver bullet, and you learn that from talking to peers. Nobody is like absolutely thrilled about their advancement operations system and wants you to have what they have. There's always room for improvement, need for human intervention, need for critical thinking. But I think that's a really good point for everyone to understand, is that no system is going to solve what really drives you crazy. Now, I will say that the way in which you extract data from Razor's Edge and the time it takes to get it out and the structure, I think that was probably the biggest thing that could be solved by a more modern system. But I mean, anything more modern than that database view. So I think some things like that are truly better in a more modern system. But householding things like that solves one problem, causes another.
Right.
You're right. there's no perfect answer out there.
Yeah. I think one of the other things was one of the other frustrations was around kind of just system performance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reliability of the system to be available and functioning. And so to me, that was one of the areas I thought, okay, that this is sort of a more foundational kind of challenge. It's not, it's not at kind of the feature function level, but just like, hey, can we log in and do our work?
And you have to remember that was a real thing. It's been better, I would say, the last 18 months with Blackbaud, but you have to remember that not that long ago, that system was down a lot. Um, and I think the singular thing I wanted to get to, and I saw this work with my Dynamics implementation at Cox Curry, training on one system. I mean, we just hired someone and they're young and it's like, okay, you've got to learn this database system and you've got to learn this web version because there's two pieces of it. That's got to stop. We have to have one system that we all work from. So
Yeah.
that would have been solved
Yeah.
by any system.
Right. Well, we're almost at time. Nancy, any final thoughts or things you want to underscore here as we wrap up?
I'm just grateful for the leadership you brought, Lot, the Salesforce
Oh, thank
expertise
you.
that you brought. I mean, I couldn't have navigated that landscape at all without you. I advocate as a former consultant, I advocate the use of consultants and expertise, bring them in to help you move things forward faster. And whether you like it or not, it also lends credence to that final answer you deliver to your leadership. So I always want people to think of that as an option when you're strapped and when you don't know a way out. Like there's help out there. There's good help out there to help you through things. I'm always appreciative of everyone who helps me. So I'm always here for a resource for anybody as well.
Well, again, thank you everybody who joined us today and spent this hour here. I hope this was useful to you, and especially Nancy, thank you so much to you for giving so generously of your time and for sharing these insights. And best wishes to Westminster for the close of this capital campaign at the end of the month.
Go Cats.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye bye.